Hi, everyone. My name is Scott Loftin, and I'm the Director of Customer Success here at Codility. We have a very important topic to address in today's webinar around remote hiring. It's my hope, in light of what is happening now with COVID-19 and into the very foreseeable future, that we can provide some insight, recommendations, and best practices on weathering the next several weeks, but also to serve as a benchmark for what could really change the trajectory of hiring for years to come. I have a few short slides to walk through before we dive into the panel discussion. First, a couple of housekeeping items. You'll notice on the GoToWebinar control panel, there's the ability towards the bottom to enter in questions. We highly encourage participation throughout the webinar and would love for you guys to enter your questions at any time. We'll be taking questions throughout the entire duration of the next hour. And so excited to hear from you as well as from us in terms of how we're going to structure this. So for right now, I'd love to dive into a few quick slides before we dive into that panel discussion. So we'll go ahead and start with the agenda. And so we will get right into our speaker introductions. We will talk through specifically currently talking through the remote impact on technical candidates and how that is kind of dramatically changing over the course of the last several weeks. We want to talk through some quick best practices around remote working and working together when we're actually not together. And then, of course, we will drive the majority of the conversation around the panel discussion and finish up with that Q&A throughout. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. Fantastic. So we've got a great speaker lineup today, and we'll go ahead and allow the speakers to do the honors of introducing themselves, a little bit about their history and background. And so we'll go ahead and start with Jessica.
Thank you so much, Scott. As mentioned, my name is Jess Meschino. I'm VP of Account Management at Workable. I've been there for about a year and 8 months, and I lead a team of about 20 account managers globally located. We've got offices in Greece, in London, and also in the US. I'm very excited to talk about our topic today. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Jessica. We'll go ahead with Hung, please.
Hey everybody, I'm Hung Lee. I'm the editor of a recruiting newsletter called Recruiting Brainfood. I've been in the recruiting business for the last 20 years or so, generally in tech and tech startup.
Fantastic. Thank you for joining us today, Hung. And then, of course, Natalia.
Hi, I'm Natalia. I'm CEO at Codility. I've been with the company for the last 8 years. Hired remotely. We have a team of 150 people today in 4 different locations plus remotely. So it's I will try to share whatever learnings we have from our own experience and from also working with our customers who are facing the same problems.
Wonderful, thank you. Looking forward to this discussion soon. Fantastic. So just as kind of, with Codility here, and again, I should probably introduce myself. So I'm the Director of Customer Success here for the Americas group at Codility. And really what our mission is as kind of a customer-facing organization is really to serve as a world-class customer experience, really listening to the objectives of our customers and specifically serving the needs of those technical recruiters and hiring managers and really providing them with a platform that helps them find the highest quality candidates through online testing and assessments and helping them accelerate their abilities to accelerate the tech hiring process. And so today, as we're, looking at the situation, remote working isn't a novel or new concept, right? A lot of us are very familiar with it. A lot of us are doing it obviously now, but also have been doing it for many, many years. As we're positioning ourselves over the next several weeks and into the next several months, what we want to keep in mind too is really serving that audience and serving the ability to really understand what it means to specific candidates in engaging in that type of environment from a remote working concept. And so what we're really seeing and what the data is really driving around is specifically that remote working in particular with engineering is super important. and allows the organization really to broaden and expand their capacity to find not only talent but the right type of talent as well. As you can see here, some of the specific statistics really drive that with a broad majority of engineers really expecting in some capacity to be able to have that ability to work remotely. And I think that we're going to start seeing organizations really with that groundswell moving towards that even more. In particular, this is really as folks are looking to diversify on the technical side and bring in female candidates in particular, very, very important to have a remote setup in terms of flexibility for our everyday lives too. And then just the ability to for folks from best practices standpoint, really rethinking kind of the way that we source, we hire, we manage that, and then specifically how we can apply automation and technology around those technical recruitment processes, right? And so one of the things that we've been working with organizations across small and large, in particular with Google's and with Citi, is really applying our ability to apply technology to make the process for remote hiring much more accessible, B, to be able to do the trust and verify specifically with assessment taking, but then also working closely and hand in hand with our customers to really make maximum impact there. If we can move to the next slide, please. And then just kind of some ground rules, right? I think most folks, again, very super familiar with the concept of working remote, but a lot of folks that we've spoken to and have heard from best practices standpoint, really prioritize the ability to work remotely. And that really takes a fundamental shift in terms of how we manage folks, in terms of how we onboard folks. And so again, as we're talking through this discussion, as we shift into the discussion with the panelists, really thinking through, from not only the early stages of recruiting candidates, but also post-stage, how we onboard them remotely, how do we serve them remotely, how do we create culture remotely, and being able to establish those protocols, in particular up front, is extremely important. And so with that said, I'd love for the panelists now to go ahead and let's share our cameras. All right, so fantastic, wonderful to see everyone today, and excited to start driving this discussion. And so the first question that I have is, again, the concept of remote hiring really hasn't been new. We've all been doing it pretty much for the last 10 years or so. And so I'd love for each panelist to go through and talk through, kind of the before. So over the course of your careers and your experiences in leading organizations around this process, how has your concept of remote hiring really evolved? And then what have you taken now, and how are we going to apply that to kind of the future of remote hiring in light of what's happening with COVID-19? So maybe we'll start with Natalia.
Oh wow! So I'm on the spot immediately. I was thinking I'll go the last. Okay. But no problem. So thanks Scott, and I'm super curious how Jess and Hung you're thinking about it as well. So I'm for sure learning a lot from you during today's webinar. What we have been doing at Codility, especially when it comes to hiring engineers, we were able to hire fully remotely without seeing a person relatively early on. So of course, we're using our own solution. So we're relying on Codility platform for code assessments, but also for remote technical interviews through our solution Codelife. But what was why this happened is because very early on we thought that we want to build a very diverse engineering team, and we want to invite a lot of it wasn't a remote work, but it was remote hiring. So we wanted to invite a lot of engineers from various countries to join us in our Warsaw office, and we were also sponsoring visas to Poland. This is where our primary engineering location is. So we've done that. I think I can fairly say that we have 5 years of experience of being able to hire remotely. We were able to hire people that we have never seen in person. The key to that is really having a very structured interview process. And we can talk a lot about that. I'm sure that you are seeing similar trends. But surprisingly, what happened in our case, that like we were a little bit scared initially. You know, it's always, of course, it's always, if we can, it's better to have in-person interaction. But actually, we were able to be in a place where we have very similar results remotely that we have when we run in-person on-sites. How about you guys? What have you been doing? Did you hire remotely, and if so, what works for you?
Sure, so I can go next if you like. So we've hired quite a bit remotely, and there have been shifts, Scott, to your question about what's transpired over the last 10 years. So I think, you know, it goes the level of engagement, right? The ability to better get to know the actual candidate and get to know them in their environment, and also to be able to engage more people in that process without having folks come on site so many times, right? So I think for us, it's opened a lot of doors. And again, before it seemed impersonal. So everything was a phone conversation if it had to be remote. Or again, maybe you were limiting your talent pool by having people that were just local to your location, wherever you are. So we've been actually quite successful in, again, being transparent, right? What the process looks like, how many people folks will be engaged with, making sure that we have a form of a GAT or an assessment that gives us, again, that ability to go a little bit more in depth without being, you know, so time consuming in the process. And then again, to be able to, you know, have conversations, and it's similar to what we're doing right now, right? So how are we engaging with each other, getting a better read, and really at the end of it, providing the candidate with more confidence in the role that they're taking, right? And getting them more excited about it and getting to better know our team. So for us, it's been a terrific win.
Fantastic. Thanks. Thank you for sharing that. Hung, would love to hear your perspective too.
I think on this, you gotta, when you're looking at how to do this, the most important thing for me is you gotta start where you think you're gonna end. So for instance, if your intent is to end with these people on site, you know, at some point, let's say you want to bring them into the office, then you have a different set of process to a situation where you might think that they're always going to be distributed. So how you want this person to work and interact with your business at optimal point will determine how you should interact and interview with this individual. So for instance, the times when I've kind of hired people directly to work remotely for me, and they were never going to be co-located. The way in which we did it was actually not to try and replicate a co-located recruitment process. We just thought, okay, we have to try and interview and assess this individual as close to the interactions that we might expect to permanently and persistently have with this person. So if you look at companies that do this really well, and I would say these are the remote only businesses like, you know, Automatic or Basecamp, GitLab very famously, they don't have an office. And one of the consistent patterns we're seeing from those folks, and I would endorse that from my own kind of experience at a small scale, is that you basically need to do trials. You need to unbundle the job and have this person interact with you in a shorter, more piecemeal way. Engineers are coded because basically this is an iterative way to recruit. You know, if you think of the standard way in which we pipe people through a candidate funnel or a hiring funnel, it's really a waterfall process. And a big reason why developers hate that is because we're asking them to go through a decision-making process that they rejected 20 years ago. Whereas in the remote kind of context, you're asking people to interact with you on a side project for a couple of hours that you will compensate for in a week, let's say, or it's a small project that's off the main platform that you can get to kind of get a feeling as to what this person will be doing, how they're going to do it, and they'll get a feeling for the type of work that they'll get involved in. And I think that basically will surface up a lot of the information that you need to know before you take it on to the next stage. I mean, someone in the chat can correct me on this, but I believe Basecamp do this as a rule. So before they hire anybody permanently, they run 2 concurrent projects at a small scale, so that both parties kind of have a try before you buy.
Fantastic.
I have a comment to that. So one thing that I completely subscribe to from what you said, Hung, is the more you can simulate how it would be to work with that particular person in your particular settings, the stronger the signal you will get during the recruitment process. And you should think, everybody should think this way, right? So now what you're describing is a fantastic process for a fully remote distributed team. What advice would you have for our attendees that today you know, they have offices, so ultimately they would like to come to offices, but they want to hire people in the meantime, right? We don't want to stop our businesses whatsoever in the current situation. How to adjust that? I'm trying to wrap my head around that as well. So have some ideas.
You know what,
hear from you guys.
I'm tempted to say that you shouldn't, Natalia. I reckon that ultimately how someone enters your recruitment process in any way, it will determine a lot about what it is that they ultimately want to do. And motivation is a huge part of this. There's going to be certain people that really are motivated to work in a distributed way. In fact, I know lots of engineers that would refuse a co-located job because they've got a way of working. You know, maybe they've got commitments elsewhere, or they prefer to work in this fashion. They would never take a co-located job. And there's people that want to be in an office, and they would not ever want to do a distributed job. So I think how you set it up will do almost like a pre-filter as to who's going to get there or not. If you set up a process that's very geared towards remote only workers, the people that don't want to kind of, or not comfortable going through it, I don't think will ever be people that you would bring into the office. I'm not entirely sure I answered your question, Natalia, but I'll come back to you if I haven't. But I think I should shut up and allow other people to say something. I'm not going to answer the doorbell. I am under threat. I'm under lockdown. That person is not getting entry into my property.
Yeah, I think that. I'm sorry, Jessica. Were you?
No. Just respond. Just.
Yeah, I think those are some really, I think, key and valuable points. So let's, in super, I think, helpful information, I'd love to pivot now into kind of maybe the future state, right? So present and future state, in particular, in light of COVID-19, you know, what have your organizations, or what trends have you start seeing over the last couple of weeks in terms of how that's impacting recruiting and the overall hiring process, but then also I think the onboarding process. I specifically am actually facing this head on right now. I hired a candidate about 2.5 weeks ago, and she was going to be a remote candidate on the East Coast in Boston, but part of her onboarding was she's going to fly out to the headquarters in one of the headquarters in San Francisco and actually onboard and meet face to face, because we really wanted her to get that interaction face to face. Obviously, that's not taking place now. So I'm really working on figuring out a virtual onboarding process. And so I'd love to hear from the panelists, not only like how the impact is going over the next several weeks and how that's transforming what you guys are doing, but then also, you know, the post hire process as well. What impacts and changes do you see forthcoming in that arena too? So maybe we could start with Jessica this time.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of the actual hiring practice, what we've been doing actually is We've moved our screens to video interview, which is something that Workable just came out with. So that's been beneficial for us to, again, obviously we're all in lockdown at this point, but even before that, start to engage with more people and be able to better, identify the right candidates more quickly, right, without, again, taking up too much time on the internal recruiters. The other piece of it is, as we move forward, we're also doing now, if we're doing our interviews, we're scheduling either with Zoom or with Hangouts. We have the ability to do two-way, right? So that's a huge help. And then the last piece, in terms of the onboarding, we've actually had this practice in place for some time where, again, because they have teams all around the globe, it's important that we have exposure to everybody, right? Everybody has a different pocket of knowledge that I want the entire team to benefit from. So we've almost built the onboarding program to be virtual while it can be delivered if we're co-located. And what I mean by that is we'll actually have our different experts that we've identified in the organization host remote sessions, right? Host hangout sessions with those individuals, and then we go through mini certification. So the advantage there is that they're actually being trained by the entire team, and there are systems in place to make sure that, again, with that certification, everyone's getting somewhat of a consistent experience. And that really has helped us, especially, post on board. We make sure that through Slack or through our regular stand-ups, whatever's happening, that everybody knows who's on the team, where to go to for help. And that really, again, that's something we've employed a while ago, and it will just continue that moving forward. So that's worked for us.
Fantastic. So Hoon, I'd love to shift to you now and kind of hear your thoughts.
It's going to be a real quick answer. I don't know. I think this is a real puzzle, because with a remote only scenario, typically if you do the trial before, you've already got rid of the onboarding issue because you're already doing the live bit of work. So it's another kind of reason why one of the big advantages of doing it remote is that you slide all of this sort of downstream. If the person is meant to be co-located and you've had to switch, wow, that's a big question. I don't know. I'm running a few communities right now. That's a big question people are asking in that group. So I think it's very persistent. I'd love to see people come up with ideas actually in the chat there. So feel free to pop them in for the people who are watching, because we're all learning on this together.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So we're also learning as we go. So we haven't been in the situation of having to onboard. We hired remotely, but we never onboarded people remotely, right? We have a session similarly to what Jess you are describing for Workable. So of course we have a lot of sessions, but nonetheless, I think there always was this special experience for somebody joining the office experience, right? Spend time with your team, like go around, see how like how the office space looks like, right? And kind of that carried a lot of good positive energy for the first day. So we don't have that right now. We can't have that, of course, for obvious reasons. We need to protect everybody's safety first and foremost. So what we're trying to do is actually, besides the standard onboarding sessions, which are knowledge sharing and are setups, knowledge sharing, right? Meetings with your managers, meetings with your teams. What we're trying to do is actually take some of this interaction that would happen in the office otherwise and move them to virtual space. So we started having team lunches for our SF office, for example, right? So whomever feels like interacting with team members, they come and have lunch, right? We don't talk work, we talk everything that we want to talk about, including how some of our employees are dealing with children or families, whatnot, right? In the current setup. I personally also spent more time one-on-one with our new team members that are just joining, that I would typically probably interact with them in the office. So I'm scheduling extra time, just 30 minutes coffee. Let's talk about stuff. Let's get to know each other. So I think that component of human interaction that otherwise would happen more naturally in the office setting, if you have co-located teams, need to be really thoughtfully moved to the virtual space to speed up this cultural induction, if you will. But I would love to learn more. So if our attendees have tried anything or have ideas, please share. We'll share it with others as well. And also please do post questions if you have any questions to everybody.
Yeah, I think maintaining the culture is also, you know, super critical. I think for remote folks in general, but then also, you know, in particular right now for a number of different reasons. And I can state, like, I love the fact that we can interact with our colleagues throughout the day. And I think technology helps solve for a lot of that. I think Jessica was mentioning, you know, the Hangouts and the Zooms, which are fantastic, but then also having a set time for the company on the whole to actually get together, see each other's faces, talk through things, and have that kind of human connection digitally as it be is really helpful to maintaining kind of that culture experience overall. We're actually.
I would still say that now it occurred to me that this situation is, you know, like we're in a stressful situation in general. The whole humankind is in a very stressful situation across geographies, right? And at the same time, so if we work in like adaptation to different work settings is already a stress to everybody. Now, if you're joining a new team and you have to adapt to a new team and you have to adapt to the new settings, that's even more so, right? So I'm thinking that it's really important to, if we have, and probably all of us have people that are currently in the onboarding process. I think we should all give them way more attention, way more support than we would do otherwise.
Absolutely. So we're actually getting a few questions here from the audience. So I thought this might be a good time to maybe pause and ask one or two of these questions to the panel. So the first question states, do you think there's a need for a hiring platform designed specifically for remote teams? Is the hiring process any different from hiring an office team? So I'm going to pose that to the panel. Would anyone care to address that?
Yeah, and it exists. I mean, you look at something like TopTal, for instance. Don't want to plug competitors. If you guys compare, I do beg your pardon. But they basically led the way in many respects for high quality engineering, remote only type of candidates. And I think they started off very much in an interim basis. I fully expect them to really ride the wave, because I suspect that a lot of companies are going to work out that actually it's totally okay to interact with people remotely from this forced shift. And we're going to end up sort of getting in there. Of course, I think that might then sort of lead to the emergence of other platforms for different segments. And the opportunity, I think, is there for businesses that currently do mainly co-located to create a way in which that can happen for remote workers as well. I do think there's a difference. I think you need to recruit differently. You need to work differently. There's not just people who are there's a big difference of proximities when you've got the over the desk way of communicating. You don't have that as remote. You've got to change the way in which you communicate. That basically means almost a different candidate sometimes, because the skills are different.
And actually, on TopTal, I have to proudly say that they are our one of the longest standing customers of Codility. They hired every single engineer in their on their platform through Codility, like through a process that involves Codility assessments as well. So we are a proud supporter of TopTal and their mission.
And I think if you have the same platform, I think it's, again, just having that flexibility to be able to create different pipelines, right, and to engage differently. So I think it all depends. And again, I'm coming from a lens of not supporting just tech hiring. So my lens of I actually think that my take would be that we will see less and less of a distinction after this whole situation, right? And the whole world adapts to the new reality. I think we will see less and less of a distinction of colocation and remote, and office teams and remote teams. It will be more of a natural blend, I think, right? Because we're all learning how to if we are in like typically an office team, now we're a totally remote team, and then we can probably decide what setup works better for us, right? So what's how much remote versus how much in the office. So I think we're really naturally progressing towards a very, very flexible blended model.
On that note, just to jump in, it could also just to add a different dimension to it, because the one aspect of this is that there's certain moments when being co-located is superior to remote, i.e. when you're at an ideation phase, when you're early prototyping, when you're brainstorming, you ideally need people in the room for that. And a quick burst of activity of people, everyone together is much more effective than doing everything remotely. But when remote really comes into its own is when basically the work is a little bit more predictable, or the ideation phase is kind of gone. It's now execution is the predominant focus. Then I think remote is definitely superior, because it means that you remove the office distractions, you remove the commutes, you do all of those types of things. So there's also an element as to support Natalia's point. The distinction might blur, but then we might figure out actually it's based on where we're at with the project at hand. And that's an interesting thing. Probably is quite a new conversation to have in our industry.
Yeah, all very good key points. I do want to pose one more question here from the audience. The question states, this is a general question about remote hiring. What is your guys' experience with regards to online assessments, and how much candidates take before they start becoming annoyed? How to make sure that you do not scare off what could be high performers because they could get another job anyway.
This person's asking the question on a webinar hosted by Codility, so we're going to give you a biased response. But yeah, I'll let you guys answer that question. You've got it's appropriate for you guys to do it.
So I have a very, so let me maybe start. So we've been dealing with exactly that topic from the onset of Codility, which is a decade already. So we have quite some experience of our own, plus a combined experience of 1,500 customers of ours. Number one rule for any assessment, that be it an online assessment or on-site assessment, number one rule for creating the right assessment is make it very relevant to the job. So I think people are really not happy with any assessment that they cannot really relate to. They do not understand how that would determine whether they're good fit for that particular role or not, and that it would be totally abstract from what they're supposed to do, right? So as long as, I would say, as long as you craft the assessment so that it first of all it measures the right things, so it measures the things that are super important for the job you're hiring for, and at the same time the candidate really has a chance to get to know your company, get to know your projects, get to know the style of how your team works, then you're great. Be it on-site, online, take home, real time, all the rest is secondary in my opinion.
I agree with that. I think the other piece too is just that transparency up front, right? So if you can be crystal clear on what that process looks like start to finish for hiring, they're more willing to go along with it. And I think, again, to your point, it has to be relevant. It has to be specific to the job, and they have to be able to see that. But absolutely.
Fantastic, great. So that for right now, that is from our audience. So we'll go ahead and shift into another topic. So talking through, obviously this has also not only changed the way that we look at the process of hiring, both from the sourcing component, but then also into the onboarding, but also into attracting talent from events. And so obviously, as we're kind of navigating this new world, a lot of events are being canceled, and for good reason. I'd love to understand from the panelists, maybe we'll start with Jessica here on this one. How has your organization handled specific recruiting events? And has there been any shift in the way of the cancellation, but then also trying to figure out how this might be something that you could promote in a different means via online or even remote as well? Would love to hear how you guys are really tackling that.
You got it. Yeah, I think if I think back, I think we made the shift probably second week of February to go to digital events, right, for everything. As soon as we saw things poking up, we had a number of events already scheduled in the books, and we've been doing the best we can to try to shift to whether it's more webinar style or if it's larger, group forums, networking sessions. And again, we're all figuring this out together, right? So while we've always had a digital presence, now it's, again, how do you make the content relevant? How do we tell a clear story? How do we make sure that, again, through the identification process, we're attracting the right folks and providing value, right? There's a lot of noise right now. So you have to make sure that you're standing out and I think you mentioned it earlier, the intent, like what are we pushing out there? What is the intent of that? And I think that allows you to build credibility to keep, it's not just the first digital event you have, it's how do you build that presence to continue that? We don't know how long this will take, right? So for us, I think, so far the shift has been pretty positive, but again, it's hang time. So it's making sure that we continue to add value in the marketplace as well as we go.
Fantastic, great. Hung, I would love to hear from you any best practices or words of wisdom around event recruiting.
Like online events, you mean? You know what? I think that this is again. I mean, I really feel for the events business because they're again one of the ones that are most conspicuously hammered by this. I'd love to see the online events really replicate the experience of online, but it's going to be so hard because basically you're competing with Netflix, right? I mean, that's what we're doing now. I mean, the folks watching this, whoever you are, thank you very much for not watching Netflix. Like, how do you compete with the consumer stuff that's really right there? There has to be a way. I look forward to an organization that really cracks it. You see big organizations like Web Summit, for instance, they're going to go, I think Collision Conf in Vegas has now gone completely online. That's a 30,000 person conference. They're going to try to do something online. I'm going to love to see how that looks because we'll see whether the technology really facilitates that, whether it makes sense for people to come and do it. If they can, then I think that you've got a great chance to harvest, or shall we say, connect with a bunch of people that could be relevant candidates for you. I'll say one more thing before I pass it over to Natalia. I think companies will probably end up going two ways. They'll either go and have one big, all the budget into one massive online event to make sure it's amazing, or they do what I do, which is just go quantity. Literally just pump it out, because you don't want to gamble that way. You want to spread the risk, just be regular, and give something of value to the audience that you care about. And from there, that might be a good way to do it. So if you're hiring for developers, let's say, then if you did something on a weekly basis that was relevant to the engineering community, probably that would be a better way to recruit rather than try and directly replicate a conference.
I would say that the human interaction, lack of spontaneous human interaction in a virtual setting, if you have if you have thousands of people attending an event, that is really the biggest challenge, right? And another thing, I think it's a great point about competing with Netflix, absolutely. Plus, I think that if everybody pretty much is going remote with work right now, how do we avoid remote and virtual fatigue, right? So I personally find myself loving short walks with my dog around the block more than ever before in my whole entire life, right? Because I'm all the time in front of a computer with looking at screen, and how do we make sure that we do not overload people with virtual content? I think that's also a question I don't have a good answer yet.
I think that's a really good point. I think being mindful around, and then actually recommending to folks to take a digital break, whether it's just 10 minutes in going in your backyard or walking your dog or something like that. I think that's crucial. We want to be mindful of what's going on, but also making sure that we have the ability to allow our brains really to recharge during these times. Really valuable information there. I'd love to switch. We've got another good question here from the audience that states, how can I reassure candidates and make them feel confident about applying to my company? I know a lot of people are nervous to switch jobs right now. I think that's a fantastic question. We started with Jessica last time. Maybe we'll start with whom this time?
Sorry, was I to start, Scott?
Yes, were you able to hear the question?
Yeah, sorry, I just misheard. I thought it was the other way around. I beg your pardon, everyone. The reason why I was a bit distracted is because I've just been sent an email by a guy called Doug Monroe, who is the CEO of Adzuna in the UK. They're a job site aggregator. And I asked him to send me data as to vacancy volume, sort of post and pre and post COVID crisis. And he's saying to me, analysis of live vacancies across the world shows a notable drop of new jobs advertised as government battles to stop the spread of the virus. There is in Italy a 41% drop of vacancies since March the 1st. The UK has seen a drop of 17% new jobs in the past fortnight, and he's going to keep pumping this information to us. So what this means to the questioner is that there'll be less competition for the ads, if that helps. You know, if you're in programmatic, for instance, or you're bidding for ad space, probably now is a good time to do it because lots of people aren't putting ads out. Whether that's because companies are retrenching or they're really reevaluating how what their plans are for 2020 and beyond, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I know, for instance, in a lot of the programmatic ad bidding processes, it's based on competition of bids. So if your job is live, it's right there, then post away.
Great. Jessica, any comments around how we could, you know, better reassure candidates around trying to make a switch during these times?
Again, I think, you know, again, the job postings are one thing. I think the other piece is, you know, as you're having the conversations, just the verbal reassurance, right? So the state of the company, what you're working towards, why the position is valued, you know, again, whatever verbal reassurance you're able to offer and be as transparent as possible, that'll make folks feel better. As again, tricky market, right? So the best you can do is just have the conversation and allow the opportunity for questions and respond as much as possible.
Absolutely.
And I would say before you reassure your candidates, your new candidates, your new job applicants, reassure yourself that you are stable. Make sure that you have a workplace that is stable. Be super blunt if this is not the case, and work on contingency plans before you invite people to join you. Make sure that your current team is stable, right? And really understand how you can provide value to your customers in the currently very quickly changing circumstances. So that's one. Once you have clarity, I would say once you have clarity that this is the case, that you are you know, you are able to go way further into the future, then I think you can pretty much just say to your candidates, hey, this is how we're looking at the future. This is where we have certainty about. This is where we don't have certainty about, right? So I think transparently talking with with all your candidates on what's the state of affairs and what's really the state of affairs after you deeply understand that as a hiring manager and as a leader, I think that's the way to go, so that you actually give everybody a chance to make their own decision on whether this makes sense for them at this stage of their life. But for sure, we'll see a lot of inflow of I'm imagining, right, an inflow of people that would actually go for job stability and will join companies that are strongly positioned to weather the storm.
Fantastic. All great advice and answers there. So I want to do a quick time check. So we're right around 15 minutes. I'm going to do a quick check, see if we have any other direction from the audience. Looks like we're still waiting on some more questions. Again, please, these are great questions. Please keep them coming as we're kind of getting to the end, and would love to drive more Q&A and hear from our audience. So the other thing that I'd like to dig into maybe a little bit more while we're still waiting for some additional audience questions is really kind of, you know, procedurally and process driven around, you know, screening and actually interviewing of candidates right now. I think we've kind of touched on, organically kind of touched on this throughout the discussion, you know, but would love to understand, you know, how maybe through maybe a case studies right now, what, you know, Jessica, I'm going to probably lean on you here. You know, current candidates you have maybe right now in pipe, what are some of the things that you're telling them right now through the process and how that process has been adjusted? You know, maybe going back a little bit to the previous question, you know, around the reassurance, but maybe if there's, if you can maybe give us some insight around what that looks like right now in terms of, you know, how it's affected your pipeline and procedurally what things you are kind of like really doing as a day-to-day best practice in you know, the reassurance, and then also, you know, driving that remote process forward.
You got it. You got it. And we have active openings right now, right? So we're in this process as we speak. So for us, I mean, we've seen a little bit of a drop in terms of candidates for sure. As we're going through, we've revisited all of our job descriptions, right? Where we're posting, you know, what we're communicating, making sure it's crystal clear, that we're able to articulate, again, now that we're in this remote work environment, what that looks like as much as possible, right? As much as you can through an advert. Again, we've also started to employ video interviewing, right? So that allows us to do quite a bit more in terms of screen, and then to establish the next conversation that we're having with the hiring manager. Again, to go through, in some situations, again, you know, the state of the company, what we're working towards, why we feel we're well suited and potentially a good fit, and also having that conversation with the candidate to make sure that at the same time that they're also a good fit for the current environment and where we see ourselves coming out of it, right? I think this is a unique situation where, again, we're hiring for remote, and there are certain criteria and things that I would look at for a remote worker versus co-located, but needing to make sure that at the same time, when this, you know, when this stay in place is lifted, that the person's also going to be successful in the other environment, right? So the conversations are a little bit more involved when we get beyond the screening. But otherwise, I think, again, pretty consistent with what we've done previously outside of some adjustments.
Fantastic advice. Hung, any additional comments or thoughts there around procedures and processes?
You know, it's just about transparency and over communication at this point. I don't think we can expect, like, everyone is in the same stress level, everyone is, you know, not in great condition, and to be honest, probably everyone's got other priorities. So I think what we've got to do, especially candidates in process that might also have this panic on, you know, prepping for interview and doing this, that, and the other, I think what companies have got to do is over communicate, be very sensitive to external demands, be okay to time shift it. I had a friend of mine who came back from Spain. He's almost certainly been infected. He's had to self-isolate. He had to do an interview. You know, he's a recruiter. He said he was sweating away trying to convert this new job he's going to get. And I'm thinking that's insane. That company should have time shifted that, or he should have also said, listen, there's a good chance I'm actually down with this. Can we reschedule at a better point? So I think just a bit of sensitivity and transparency will go a hell of a long way right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. Any additional thoughts around this, Natalia?
So I completely agree with Jess and Hung. So pretty much you guys are spot on.
Right. Yeah, I think it does make sense. I'm also going to be actively recruiting here on my team, and I can't thank you guys enough for giving me some, you know, the transparency, but also some additional ideas that I'm going to actually put into practice, I think, moving forward. So hopefully the rest of the audience feels the same. We are starting to receive quite a bit of questions, and I do want to provide enough time to be able to do that. And so one of the questions is, in what ways can collaboration style hiring and remote start hiring differentiate themselves in employer branding efforts? I don't know if one of the panelists would like to take that question. And it's in what ways can, it says colocation. I don't know if that's right, or if it's collaboration style hiring and remote start hiring differentiate themselves in employer branding efforts.
Pretty much, I'm kind of guessing that this is about, you hire for the office location. Let's say we hire for San Francisco, right? And therefore we have a process for, okay, you're going to join our team in San Francisco versus you're going to join our team remotely and you can live in Croatia, or you can live in Thailand, or you can live in Greece. So how do you run employer branding activity? That's how I'm reading the question. Yeah, how do you run the employer branding activities for those different scenarios?
Yeah, on that note, I think maybe you can, there's a lot of stuff you can actually do for both. I mean, you mentioned video, Natalia. You can absolutely do a video of the office. You should do that anyway, right? I think there's a good way to show, again, the transparency, the authenticity, you know, nothing post produced. It's literally shoot it on a phone, just show people what it's all about. That'll go a long way. So yeah. But again, I think that was what the question is. Apologies if we got that interpretation wrong.
So we have another. Thank you guys for those comments. We have another question here from the audience. Any thoughts on one-on-one interviews versus panel when you're using remote and video? It's a very good question. Maybe Jessica on this one.
Yes. I'm curious. What do you guys do, and what do your customers do? Do you have anything? I'm super curious as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the job, right? So if I speak from personal experience, if it's, again, a non-technical position, it's one-on-one, right? If it's something where we're going to have somebody do an assessment and they're going to walk through what they've put together, then it's a panel discussion. But again, it really does depend on the job, and even for our customers, it's the same situation. I think it really will depend what you're hiring for.
You know, this is not an answer to the question because I don't know the answer to it. But it just adds a dimension that's really quite significant, because one of the ways in which you can try and de-bias an interview is actually to get two people in to do it rather than just one-to-one. So you need to have two interviewers to one candidate, just to make sure that you don't sort of have one person kind of do confirmation bias. So theoretically, you should do panels, irrespective of the situation, on the diversity aspect. But then again, anybody who's been on a multi-person video call will know there's all kinds of increased variables there that are going to create chaos, right? So yeah, I don't think it's an easy answer to that. I really don't, and we probably don't have the data for it. This is also new. So yeah, but there's a question mark there on what is convenient and what is efficient, and what may be the right thing to do. Yeah, tough one.
Absolutely. So kind of shifting gears a little bit here, we have a question specifically posed to the panelists, going kind of back to, you know, maintaining culture through these times right now. The question is, I'm interested to know if any of the speakers have observed a difference in culture between core located teams and remote teams. How do you maintain and support the shared value set of the company between the both of them? That's a good question.
So I can only speak to an experience of having some of our team members remotely, but we've seen them in person, right? So actually, I do not have experience of hiring somebody remotely to work remotely and never meet. For people that are hired remotely to work remotely, we still were in the past. We were actually making sure that they are in the offices for some time, for a couple of days, for a week, right? To really get the kind of like cultural immersion. So I don't have a very good answer to that. If you will never meet that person in person.
I think the only thing that we've done, so we do have situations where we have different offices, and then we do have some remote folks. So what we try to do is have, if we have to do a team meeting, we make sure that it's by region, and if it's remote, it's entirely remote, right? So you're not sitting in and listening to something happening in a conference room. Mm-hmm. We do a lot of stand-ups. We do a lot of, you know, random, like nowadays, a lot of random hangouts. The hangout will be open all day. People can pop into it. They can ask different questions. So we try to alleviate as much as we can, you know, any difference in experience. Nowadays, it doesn't matter, right? Nowadays, everybody's remote, but that seems to have helped in the past.
You know, this is a major problem for a mixed company. I think a lot of companies solve it by going one or the other, and force everyone to have the same experience co-located, or force everyone to have the same experience totally remote. Sort of mixed environments, I think, struggle with this more than anyone. And I want to say there's two things to think about. Number one, you want to question the assumption that you should try and roll out a universal culture across those two groups, or 3, 4, 5, 6 groups. You may not wish to do that. I remember very clearly when I used to be head of talent for some ad tech business in the UK. We had New York sales office, so very much two different offices. And I was the HR guy saying, yeah, we're gonna have a single culture, all our values, this, that, and the other. And I tried to implement some initiatives there. Until the CEO pulled me to one side and said, Hung, listen, we don't want to do that. We tried it. They're New York sales guys. We're Austrian nerds. It didn't work. We're two different people. We don't not like each other, but we have completely different operating modes. And actually, functionally, there was no functional proximity either. The sales guys could go and sell this stuff, whereas these PhDs, they were deep in the research. They really had no interaction operationally at all. So I think we need to question the assumption whether you do need to roll out a universal culture on here. We know, for instance, in any case, there's microcultures in your business regardless. So why not embrace the microculture? That's a form of diversity, right? So there's the one thing. If you are determined to roll out universalism, one of the techniques to really think about is how you communicate. And one of the mixed companies that I really like in terms of how they do things is a company called Heech in Paris. They're kind of an Uber competitor. I think Uber are banned in France, but they are mixed. So they've got a head office, they've got remote workers. But one of the things that they do is that they never have in-person meetings, even if people are in the office together. And the reason why is that they've decided that everyone needs to be having the same experience. So if they've got a meeting where there's 3 people that are in the office and there's 2 people dialing in from outside, those 3 people go into separate booths, they get up their laptops and they share the same experience. And the reason why they do that is because they don't want to have the meeting before the meeting. They don't want that to close the call and then the 3 guys who are in the room saying, oh my, do you remember Natalia? Shh. Because that kind of conversation will happen because you don't have equality in the communication channel. So and answer the question, if you want to universalize the culture, you really have to universalize and discipline how you communicate. And you have to default to what the remote guys do because they don't have the choice to come in to do the in-person.
Great. Perfect. Thank you so much. And that actually takes us just right about to time. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to formally thank our panelists for joining us today. Extraordinarily informative and insightful information here as we're going through this. And I just want to thank you all for providing your feedback and your information here. Again, thank you so much. What I'd like to say is, please stay safe, and obviously let's stay connected through all of this. And again, thank you again for all of your guys' time. Look forward to hopefully connecting again with you soon.
Great. Thanks everyone for watching.
All right. Take care. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.